Well, Tripoders, it's that time of year again when we turn our attention to exotic foreign holidays, staycations, and even days out in our local area. And if you're like me, I'll be travelling on holiday with my family, which for me consists of my wife and my two lovely preschool children. So I'd love to go off and do some photography on holiday, but I also hope to return still married. So disappearing off for a few days to indulge in some travel photography is going to be a big no-no for my holiday. However, it is possible to take some amazing travel photography with your phone camera and without sacrificing any time with your family. You see, the humble smartphone really does have a place in travel photography. In fact, I've even heard it suggested that it's more versatile than those bigger DSLRs or the mirrorless cameras of the type that I would normally carry around with me, just because it's so much more smaller and so much more unobtrusive in its nature. So if you're going away somewhere this summer, or you're planning some day trips in your local area and you just want to improve your travel photography, then stay tuned, because we're going to look at the 5 truths that are holding you back in your travel photography. My name's Steve, this is Behind the Tripod, and let's get into our top 5 list. So truth number 1, you're standing in the same place as everyone else. Now, we've all been to those iconic locations, and what do you normally see? Sometimes hundreds and hundreds of photographers all standing together and all hoping to get the same shot as each other. Now, I'm not one to criticise other photographers, we all have our own creative goals, and for some it's clearly to photograph these honeypot locations and tick them off their list, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if that's what you enjoy. But I'm imagining, by the fact that you're still watching this video, that you're after something a little bit different from your photography. When I was at school, I was a bit of an oddball. I used to love Star Trek, and I still do, and I used to absolutely adore punk rock. And I was in a band, it was a crazy time, I had loads of hair, it was different colours each week, and I was never afraid of forging my own path and doing my own thing. And I suppose what I'm getting at is that's never really left me, because I was never going to be one of those photographers that will be happy jostling for space in an overcrowded queue, trying to get the same picture as everyone else. So in these sort of situations, I usually find myself buying the postcard or a print, and I set out to find something a bit more original for myself. So for example, if you're photographing a building, you could find an alternative angle. You could get down low, you could get up high. You may choose something for foreground, like a flower or something interesting, and throw the background into blur so the iconic location just becomes blurry. A few years ago, I visited Berlin, and I was absolutely dying to get a shot of the Berlin Wall, but I was determined to put my own spin on it. So I sat down, I had a coffee, and I watched my surroundings for a while. And as I watched my surroundings, I became aware of some tours that were happening with the old Trabi cars from East Europe. And I started to think about a composition that I could come up with that would show a flavour of the Berlin Wall and a flavour of Berlin from my own creative perspective, and that's what I attempted to do. So try this for yourself. When you go to an area that's well known, come away from the crowds and try and find your own perspective on that area. Which leads me to truth number 2, which is kind of related to truth number 1. It's that you're shooting at the same time of day as everybody else. The most common time of day for photographing these big popular landmarks is usually between 11 AM and 3 PM, as this is when most of the tourists are out and about and hitting the streets. However, the best time of light is often either end of the day, so sunrise or sunset. Now, you might be restricted by opening times, but many of these places are quite accessible at any time of day or night. So if you're determined that you really want something specific for your portfolio, this might be a really good option for you, because you could get up early. If you're traveling with a young family like I am, you'll still be able to get up, do your photo shoot at sunrise, and be back home before everyone's even up and had their breakfast. And it's a really magical time to be out and about at sunrise. And if you haven't done it before, I really encourage you to go out when you know that the rest of the world is still asleep. You get somewhere where there are no crowds, and you get to photograph something that's very popular, a big tourist destination, in a way that very few people ever even experience it, because they're still in bed and they're missing that wonderful time of the day. Truth number 3 is that you're missing the smaller details that make the place extra special. So try this, try popping your phone in your pocket and spend some time wandering around your location and then really absorbing it and really getting the feel of what's special about that place, and just watch the world go by. Try and notice all those little details, try and get the nuances that make that place special. And now you can start photographing, so take your phone out and avoid the temptation of photographing the big obvious scenes, but focus on those smaller, intimate details that make the place special. Some examples of this could be interesting patterns of bricks or tiles. It might be the shadows cast by things like coffee shop chairs or umbrellas. Sometimes it might be a quirky doorway or a really interesting sky or an interesting detail in somebody's window boxes. There's lots of little things that you might see. So experiment and play with your compositions. You can even use some of the free apps, such as the free editing app called Snapseed, that allow you to edit your pictures as you go. And just remember, not all these photos will even work. Some of them will be dreadful, and that doesn't matter. It's all in the nature of experimenting. You're trying different things. You will eventually play around and land on a composition that really works for you and is completely unique for your trip and for you at that time. And this leads me really nicely to truth number 4. You're focusing on things and not people. Because often when we travel, even if it's those short day trips in our local area, it's the people that we come across that we remember the most. And sometimes photographing those people can be a really nice way of adding a personal touch to your travel photographs. And you will certainly create a very unique set of images from your travel photos. Now, this is where phones come in really well, isn't it? Because phones are a great way to photograph people, because everybody has one and everybody's used to seeing people taking photographs with their phones. They can become less threatened than if you pull out a big DSLR or a mirrorless camera and try and photograph people with one of those, because people tend to pose or they get uncomfortable and you don't get those natural candid shots. But if you pull out your phone, nobody really bats an eyelid and you can get some really lovely shots of people. So try shifting your focus away from things and towards people, which leads me into that final truth, which is truth number 5. You're missing the story. Every great travel photo should tell a story, and there are so many different ways to tell stories in your photographs. You could have a single standalone image that tells a story through just exciting the viewer's imagination in some way, or you can create a series of pictures that tell either your whole trip or an aspect of your trip, but try to think about what your images are trying to say about where you've traveled to and what stories of that. Now, storytelling is something that I could probably do an entire video on. If you'd like to see a video on storytelling, please leave a comment below and I'll do one. But I've got a couple of tips just to keep you going. Firstly, you could use a mixture of the techniques we've covered already. So, for example, you might focus on a person or an object and let the background iconic location just become a blur, and that just becomes part of the background, and that changes the emphasis of the picture and of the story. Secondly, an interesting method of storytelling is having something really unexpected in your shots. So some examples of this could be some rubbish in a beautiful river, or someone sweeping the road or delivering the milk outside an iconic building, or even a seagull eating a chip on one of those "do not feed the gulls" signs. Now, this is a shot I've been trying to get for a number of years without any success. So if I do one day get it, I will definitely share it within the Facebook group for Behind the Tripod. However, if any of you have that image or have taken it before, please feel free to pop over to Facebook, the link's below, and share it in the group, because it would really make me smile. So to really give your travel photos the edge, find a way to tell a story in your photographs using some of the tips that we've gone through today. And if you'd like to learn some easy top tips on how you can actually compose your pictures with your phone, then please check out this other video here where I go over just that.